Hey everyone, welcome to a special episode of the Strategic Growth Podcast. Damn.
Hey, do I need to teach you how to do it?
Dude, I know, right? How did I fail?
Or you just
I fall all over my own podcast twice now.
Just breathe, man. Count down, man. Count down.
The Golding Group Strategic Growth Podcast, formerly known as the Neo Marketing Podcast, offers real-world advice, expert analysis, and smart success strategies for entrepreneurs, investors, decision makers, and business leaders.
Hello and welcome to a special edition of the Strategic Growth Podcast. I have a very special guest in the studio with me today, Gregory Jerome, image consultant, stylist with a focus on brand, self-brand. We're going to talk about that today. Introduce yourself, Gregory.
I am Gregory Jerome, as you stated, entrepreneur.
That's right.
Award-winning entrepreneur. I would like to put that on there.
That's right. We're going to talk. We're going to get into that. I'm so proud of that.
Personal stylist, personal branding, professional branding, corporate branding, all based on fashion psychology.
There you go, folks. There is a lot of business value in the personal brand appearance and everything that comes with it for the individual, especially leadership within an organization, right? So give me a few minutes on your concept of when you work with a leader, a CEO, business owner, maybe a self-brand like a pro athlete. I know you work with a lot of pro athletes. How do you bring these things to them to make them understand that their appearance is just as important as their leadership style or what they do on the court or on the field?
Exactly. The thing for me, my approach, once again, as I stated, is about fashion psychology, helping the individual understand the internal and external benefits of it, and enlightening them on the topics of perception factors, the perceptual factors, the cognitive factors, the emotional and behavioral factors as well. A lot of people don't understand that goes into the way that you present yourself. Others may think it's superficial. I disagree. Many years of being in the mental health space, background is in psychology, behavioral science, and ethics, but I also have over 20 years in the luxury retail
with some very
industry. Interesting
brands. A lot of brands we've heard of, and some other ones that maybe are more niche influential, but very influential as well. Mm-hmm. An interesting mix and background. We talk a lot about in this podcast. There's no direct line, one size fits all path to success, right?
There is not. It's a very, like anything, it's all tailored.
Right. Okay.
No pun intended.
Okay. I like that.
But it's tailored to who the individual is.
Right.
The most important thing is communication. Branding is about communication.
100%.
Nonverbal, verbal, you take it. So what is your form when you go out? What is your style?
Right.
What is your communication style? Verbally and non-verbally. Because you can identify a brand. You can trust a brand. You can identify the quality of the brand just from a visual aspect. So when I put the best collar forward, there's another one for you.
It's full of little tidbits here today. We'll have good stuff for the social media post.
Right. Yeah. So it's the thing for me is helping people understand what are they trying to communicate.
Right.
What messages you wanted to convey to the world, but most importantly, how are you communicating with yourself? What is your perception of yourself?
There you go.
That's the most important thing.
That's where it begins, right?
That's the most important thing is how do you view yourself?
And that's absolutely too, you mentioned the word superficial, but it's not superficial when we're talking about how you view yourself, how you stay motivated yourself, how you have confidence in yourself in order to go out and be your best, whether it's in a boardroom or on the court or just, maybe in a relationship, maybe trying to attract someone to you as a friend or otherwise.
Right. And that's the same thing even in business. How you talk about attraction. I'm a firm believer in the law of attraction. There's a conversation I had with Representative who was taught by Bob Proctor. And that's the same thing that they teach, but they teach it in a different form. Well, I teach it from a sartorial standpoint of how do you attract those things to you that you desire to have.
Right.
So if I go into a networking event and I walk in, not necessarily a custom suit, but it's tailored and looks great on me. I have the complementary colors that goes with my skin tone, eye color, hair color, etc. And I have the shoes and I'll walk in. I don't say a word to anybody, but everybody looks at me and says, who is that guy?
Right.
I need to meet him.
So you're already non-verbally communicating to them.
I've already put that out there of
Right.
like, I'm the man that you need to have a conversation with.
And actually inviting them to have that conversation because you're put together.
Exactly. And it could be the small details that help with that separate you from everyone else, that creates that curiosity of, this person is interesting.
And I'm glad you mentioned details. So we did some shopping yesterday. Gregory's helping me work on my personal style. Not that my style was a train wreck, but there were a ton of the small things I was doing wrong, not paying attention to the details. We had a lot of those conversations yesterday that add up to the overall persona, right? So go through a few of your top tips for some of the details people can do. That's not necessarily about spending money. It's just about paying attention to what image they're trying to create for themselves.
Right. The tips that I like to enlighten people on that I believe that is most beneficial to a person from a perception of self than others is the proper fitting of garments. And the reason why I say proper fitting of garments because let's take COVID for an example.
Right.
A lot of people gain weight.
A lot of people affected by that.
Some people lost weight.
Sure.
So now they have new body types that they never had to dress before.
Right.
So how do I dress this body?
Or maybe they've been working home for a year. Now they got to go back to the office.
How do I dress this body?
It's got to be different.
Like it's totally different.
Right.
But even with that body type challenge, people wear oversized clothes. It drapes them differently because they are now self-conscious. They want to hide certain things.
Right.
They don't feel confident within it. So when wearing these larger draping clothes, you look even larger.
Which is the opposite of what they're trying to do.
Right. Which and the reason why I'm going through this is so you can understand the importance and what happens with this.
Right.
Cause and effect as well. Because not only it comes with, oh, I'm not wearing the proper clothes. What message is that given? Non-verbally. Well, this person doesn't pay attention to details. This person is sloppy, so it's probably sloppy. He or she is probably sloppy with clothes.
Maybe not really
probably
good with
would work
follow
too.
through or things of that nature.
Right. So it delivered these different messages people can convey from it. And then some people are like, well, that's on another person if they feel that this is the way I am. Well, this is the way that you're presenting yourself. So that's one. Another tip that I would say. Matter of fact, I think this comes from a conversation we had with a gentleman during our shopping experience, is about putting starch on shirts.
Oh, right.
So starch on shirts, not a good move. Why? Because it eats up the fabric. It turns it yellow. It makes it deteriorate the fabric.
Yeah.
So no starch
right
on clothes. So that's another one. The other thing is these.
But there are ways around that, right? He mentioned he likes starch in his shirts because he liked those nice stiff collars. But you know ways to get that same look without using the starch.
Which I was segueing into. So these with the collars, instead of starching collars to make them stiff as a board, there's the thing called magnetic collar stays.
Yeah.
You can adjust the collars, even when you're wearing a tie and when you're not wearing a tie. So now it makes you look more studious. So now you have a different message when you walk around. Because I used to be like, well, how are these guys wearing these shirts with these stiff collars? Right. But you can also get when you purchase custom shirts, which I would recommend for a lot of people,
right?
Especially with the body type challenges. Make that investment into custom garments because it's going to be able to fit you better in certain places versus the off the rack or ready to wear garments.
Right.
So you have to be able to pay attention to that and being willing to invest in that. And then you can also do that with your collar. You can make thicker collars for yourself so you can have a different presentation with that. So there's different things. You can change the buttonhole threads. You can change the button threads. You can put monograms on your shirts. European style is more here by the abdomen versus on the sleeve. So when you open up your jacket, your initials or name is on the front of your shirt and people can see it.
Even lining in your jacket, right?
You can change the lining of your jacket. So it's only like small details that you can do that will enhance your style. The other one is, being able to take care of your garments. When you take off your jacket, sport coat, suit jacket. You hang it up and allow it to breathe for 24 hours before you put it in the closet.
Okay.
Well, you need to make sure you also
good tip right there.
You also put it on a wooden hanger.
Okay.
So wooden hangers are where it's supposed to be. Another tip for the lifespan of your shoes: invest in shoe trees,
Which we did yesterday.
exactly, and also invest in a shoehorn.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Yes.
And take off your shoes by hand versus by foot. Right.
Don't kick your shoes off. Don't get yourself a great pair
Yeah.
of shoes that fit and look nice, and then
And
rub
treat
them up
'em.
against each other all day.
Yeah, exactly. So the ultimate thing is this: is being aware of your relationship with your garments.
Okay.
Because this is where people fail to realize the way that you treat your garments are going to treat you. It's just like any other business relationship, any romantic relationship,
Right.
a friendship. Like what you give it is what's going to give you.
There you go. Right.
So-
that's sage advice right there for sure.
Right. So if you take care of your clothes, they're going to take care of you.
So 2022 business as a concept, as a term, who's in business, who's an entrepreneur, what they look like, what their background is, where they come from, how they got from not knowing anything about business to knowing a lot, to being an entrepreneur, to starting your own business. You've launched this version of your business recently, but you've been in business a long time. All these things are changing. Technology and communication and the internet and social media and smartphones and all of this stuff. Even this setup here, back in the 90s and 2000s, a recording setup like this would have been big as this whole table. Now it's a unit this small, could fit in the palm of your hand, right? So everything is changing, but it creates opportunities for all of us
Absolutely.
to do things in unique and different ways, right? So 10 or 20 years ago, if you wanted to be a personal stylist, you had to work at a shop or with a firm. Now you can be on your own. You can work. You can be centered in Philadelphia, but have clients all over the country, whether you're traveling or using virtual technology, et cetera, right? So how does that translate also into the fact that entrepreneurs, business owners, business leaders, self-brands, people with a brand image of themselves they don't have to do the traditional buttoned up, double-breasted suit and tie, colors, etc. So what are the things that entrepreneurs in 2022 can embrace that you couldn't do 10, 20, 30 years ago?
That's a good question, and good follow-up from where things used to be to where they are now.
Right.
The thing that I say to embrace most importantly through my own personal experience of being an entrepreneur, but also working with other entrepreneurs and working with people in the corporate world, because everything is changing.
Yeah.
So the thing that I would most highlight the most would be innovation and creativity. How can you become the unicorn?
Right.
Being the unicorn has perks because it causes, like you said, it causes conversation of your uniqueness.
Right.
Of like, well, I never thought of it this way. I never seen it from the scope before. That's very innovative that you created this. Because for me, I've started out with this company. I came out of homelessness, basically. I was in Los Angeles for 3 years. I was in a motorcycle wreck that put me on temporary disability. I was working for Joseph A. Bank in El Segundo, California at the time. And it wasn't taking care of my means to survive. So I needed a new chapter in life. And I navigated the space of just touring different cities to figure out where I'm going to place my flag. And ultimately ended up in Philadelphia, where I applied for a image consultant position for a custom clothier boutique shop in Rittenhouse in Philadelphia, which is the most affluent community in Philadelphia. So one, having the confidence while being homeless to apply for a job like that, even though I've been, denied to work for other brands before while I was homeless to get work, right? So I was kind of like I fell through a trap door of deep depression at one point.
Right.
And I had to figure out, how do I get myself up? And I explored that space. And I got the position due to my background.
Right.
5 months later, COVID comes, and then I'm out.
So
And
life knocked you down? picked yourself back up.
Right.
Life comes at you again. You gotta progress on, right?
So what happened was, like, I love fashion. I love human empowerment.
Right.
That's what I love the most. Those are my two things that I'm passionate about. And I was like, how do I create this? How do I create something that I'm passionate about, that I love, that I enjoy? And then it also provides those services to help individuals, no matter what, community they're in,
Right.
no matter what industry they're in. How can I help them? And so I took my psychology background, and then I took the fashion side of things that I've been in, and combined them both.
There you go.
And created this Gregory Jerome Image Consulting to provide these services from a fashion psychology approach. And so when the opportunity presented itself, there was an entrepreneurship hackathon in Philadelphia.
Oh, we love hackathons.
And it was December 2020, and I applied for it. Now, I didn't have any type of game plan for my business. I had no proposals. I had no marketing strategies.
You were early. You had an idea.
I just had an idea.
You were following your gut.
And I was just following my intuition.
That's how it gets started, man.
And so I applied for it, submitted the wrong application on the deadline time.
Oh, man.
And I called back, and the help desk, and I was like, listen, I submitted the wrong application. Can you help me? They was like, sure. I was like, blessings.
Thank you.
Right? So I reapplied. 24 hours later, found out I was a finalist. Then the next phase was, hey, tomorrow you have to do a presentation for judges. So the grand prize was 10 grand. So I was like, you know what? I don't have any of this. Let me grab some pizza and a few adult beverages to help me out. Took me back to my college days.
Settle in and cram, right?
All-nighter, man. It was an all-nighter. So I created the whole marketing strategy, everything that goes into it. And I presented it the next day. 24 hours later, out of 17 candidates, I placed as a runner-up, and I won a couple of grand. And so from that point, that built my confidence of what I was
the key,
doing.
Right?
And so now I was like, you know what? Now I have the motivation to really accomplish this, because they witnessed something that wasn't even truly developed yet.
Right. So you combined something you had passion for.
Mm-hmm.
You took an innovative approach, trying to combine the psychology and the fashion world at the same time, not just fashion, not just psychology. You made sure you offered value to the people you were working with, presented in this pitch competition, but wrapping business sense around it, a structure, an organization, and things that go with a proper business model.
Exactly.
And out of that came a potential for a successful business. So that's where people, I think, fail, is sometimes they have a passion and an idea, and they don't want to get too deep into structure and organization because they feel like that kind of quelches their ideas. I always say that frees them up to be more creative in their execution because you are structurally sound. So you did all this stuff to create a potential and successful business model, got a couple of bucks in your pocket, launched it, and have had great success on that launch. Now, what, about 18 months, 24 months?
Yes, it's going about a year and a half now.
Okay. 18 months in, working with maybe some people that we've heard of?
Yeah. I've been able to accomplish a lot within this short period of time. The most successful person I've ever worked with, from a monetary standpoint, is Bobby Portis, NBA champion 2021 of the Milwaukee
Bucks, right?
So I did a championship custom suit for him.
Nice.
And hand delivered it to him at his house. So that was great. But I've also been able to work with judges, attorneys. I've been able to work with VPs of sales. I've also, here's the innovation when I was telling you about innovation. I've also from the services I provide, I created a polished professional presentation, which is a new way of learning and development for corporations, for organizations, small businesses, etc., to help with that employee engagement, to help increase productivity, to help increase sales. So I go in, instead of being the traditional executive leadership coach or the business development coach, I'm coming in from a sartorial standpoint to help people understand, how do you create this authenticity within your employees and your brand that also creates confidence within your team.
Yes.
You know, that joy and happiness that they're able to flourish with who they are versus being conditioned to the old traditional corporate world.
Right.
And so I've been
do
able
business in 2022, not business in 2000 or 1950 or
exactly
1975, right?
So I've been able to work with companies on the East Coast such as PSE&G. This is an energy company. Also Pico. I've worked with National Sales Network. I've worked with Keller Williams. I've worked with some universities, Temple University, Rowan College University. So I've worked with different places in different industries. And people always come to me like, well, who's the client? I'm like, listen, that's a hard thing to say. That's almost going to see a therapist who said, well, who's your client? And I'm like, that's me, because you come to me, it's shop therapy.
Yeah.
That's another one for you.
Yeah, well, we did a little bit of that yesterday.
Exactly.
Now,
So-
you mentioned a word that is very important on this podcast. We talk about this concept a lot. When it's one of our most important things we do on the podcast and in our business life, authenticity. Authenticity, when we talk about branding and presentation, and that authenticity, understanding who you are, whether you are a person, individual, you're a brand, a collection of people, and you're putting yourself out, or just how you dress yourself every day, right? Authenticity is the key. You almost can't go wrong if you're being authentic.
Correct. There was a question that came to me at a networking event, and they asked me, well, what do you think about code switching? Interesting question from a sartorial standpoint.
Right, yeah.
And my thing is this, going back to authenticity, and even from ethics, understanding what environment you're in and knowing how to adapt to those environments while still being who you are.
That's right.
So even from a cultural standpoint, work culture, business, whatever culture it is that you're going into, how can you create the flexibility, the adaptability to be able to be authentic even in these different environments and conditions?
Yes.
So even if we compare this to climate control, so there's different ways you have to dress if you're going to Florida,
sure,
versus going to Washington,
yes,
versus going to Maine or Oklahoma.
Right.
It's totally different.
Especially this week.
Especially this week.
Yeah.
So how do you dress for these climates? Just the same way, how do you dress in these professional climates, these personal climates? So it goes to ethics. And some people question and say, well, how do you put ethics inside of that? Well, just like that.
Yes. And authenticity, because if you're being authentic, you're being ethical. It goes back to, again, that term that superficial or being, if you're being superficial because you're trying to maybe wear a nice suit or have a nice watch to impress people or to make people think that you're more successful than you really are, that superficial approach is inauthentic, and people will sniff that out if you're being fake with them, right? Or if you're trying to act like you've achieved something you haven't achieved. Whereas if you're presenting your true self authentically, it doesn't matter if you got a $5,000 worth of clothes on or $50 worth of clothes on. If you're paying attention to those details, you're being authentic and you're presenting who you really are, people are going to see it and either be drawn to it or be repelled by it if it's authentic.
Correct. And the thing,
it's the same thing with your brand too. When you have your logo and you have your swag and the way you present your company online and in physical space and signage and all those things, right?
You're going to gravitate those people.
Authentic and consistent and back to the core values of a brand.
That's most important. Core values.
It's going to come together, right?
Right. The thing that I look at, and I'm gonna touch on this because you spoke about it, of a person perceiving to be something that they're not.
Right.
Now, there's another side of this from a holistic metaphysical space that I like to navigate, because I also work with individuals from a holistic approach. I use metaphysics of color. Sometimes I use symbols for representation of culture or things they believe in. Sure. Sometimes I use crystals and their accessories. So I utilize these different things to help empower these clients. Now, when you go into the sense of, can I create an image or portray an image that's not me yet, but I want to be?
Yes, I was trying to figure out how to slip in dress for the job you want, not the one you have, and this is exactly what you're about to address.
And so for me, I know what clientele I would like to be in front of. It's a lifestyle.
Sure.
And you have to be able to resonate in that space with those individuals.
Yes.
Even though it may sound superficial, that, oh, you shouldn't have to dress this way to be. Well, let's think about it for a moment. All of us, human nature, we make choices and decisions based off of what things look like.
And as much as no one wants to admit it, we all judge people that we meet on the streets, in every situation. Your first impression of someone, as much as you want to be open-minded, it happens.
It's human nature.
Yeah.
We judge from the cars that we purchase, the homes that we rent or purchase, to food, to the clothes, to the shoes. Everything is based off of visual.
Accents, dialogue.
Everything is visual at first.
Right.
I mean, okay, let's think about relationships, right? Romantic relationships. We're out and we're looking and we wanna mate.
Right.
We don't look at a person and say, oh, that personality is astounding by this person. I love it.
They look very studious. No, we're physically attracted.
Or saying that they're studious by looking at them. First, you have to be attracted to something to be able to even have the confidence to approach it.
You have to peak interest. Gain attraction, which ironically is the same thing you do in branding with your marketing, with your branding, with your logo, with your messaging. Is you have to gain someone's attention.
Yes.
And then pique their interest.
Exactly.
Same thing.
How do you do it? But even on a different sense, segueing back into the holistic approach of things and like where you want to be. You spoke about dress for the job you want versus you have. So for me, I know that I have to resonate in a different space at a different frequency.
Yeah.
So if my frequency doesn't match another frequency, we're not gonna come together and do anything.
Which is okay.
Which is fine if that's what you prefer to have.
If you're both being authentic, it's fine.
Right. But if you really want to elevate yourself, be in those rooms, you have to present yourself in that manner as well to be able to match that frequency, to have those conversations, because those individuals from a visual aspect can even see the small details, your appearance, the way you carry yourself. It's from body language, it's from eye contact, it's all these different things, because culturally that's a different space. So climate control, once again, how are you addressing the climate?
You're good with these, so we got to go.
We go all day.
You mentioned body language, because it's not just superficial things like things you have on that you bought in a store somewhere. It's because yesterday we talked about body language in our shopping experience as well. Something I didn't notice about my body language, you pointed out. These things, all of this stuff goes together to create your personal image that you're portraying in the world as you come through it, right?
Correct. And
also, you have to, the ability, like you said, to kind of change your frequency to get yourself into a different room, a different opportunity. If you're trying to create opportunity for yourself.
Exactly.
And pushing yourself out of your comfort zone.
Exactly.
Creating opportunity outside of your comfort zone. These are concepts that we talk about in business all the time. So why wouldn't we apply them to our personal brand as much as we do our business brands?
Yeah. Well, the thing about it is, people are not aware or cognitive of what this really is about.
Just like it's the things you were pointing out to me yesterday when I was shopping, not just my dress, but in my body language, definitely one I didn't notice until you pointed it out. And now that you pointed it out, I'm like, dadgummit, I can't get it out of my head, because you have a different perspective of my physical than I do.
And it's, and we'll address it. So it's the hip shifting.
Right.
Some people, they'll slouch. Some people, they'll move their posture. But even with that being said, like, that's a presentation.
It is.
And if you're in the room doing those kind of things, then that's going to convey a different message when you're amongst those people, even though you're being authentic. Well, this is me. Well, sometimes those things can hurt you.
You got to get out of your comfort zone if you want to
get out of the comfort zone,
new.
Restructure yourself,
right?
Because that's going to allow you to step in new spaces. Now, in my culture, we call that sellout. Sometimes people think that just because I have to go in and quote unquote pretend to be something that I'm not, to be in this room.
But that goes back to authenticity, right? Because
exactly,
adjusting your posture slightly, like I just sat up, or you noticed I just sat up as I was going to say the word posture, is you can't construe as selling out unless I were to completely change a body motion that was completely unnatural and would never do otherwise outside of trying to get your attention or something of that nature. So, making minor adjustments or doing things to make you fit into a conversation so that, again, you create that opportunity for yourself is a completely different scenario than doing something 180 from your nature, which is inauthentic,
right,
in order to make people think something that you are that you're not. And
Agreed.
I think that's where it is. And that's the difference is minor changes to give yourself an opportunity to get outside your comfort zone is always a good idea. Doing things only to present yourself in an unnatural light is definitely selling out.
And this is the thing. How can you expect different outcomes if you keep doing the same?
Right? The definition of insanity.
What are we doing?
That's right. So that's why you have to get out of your comfort zone.
Make those adjustments.
That's right.
You have to be able to resonate in those frequencies once again. Resonating in frequencies creates those opportunities.
Thank you, Gregory Jerome, for being on the podcast today, for taking me shopping yesterday, first of all, teaching me some style tips, but having this conversation on the podcast for our audience about how they can step up their game a little bit, think about their image, about their self-brand, and incorporate that into their business pursuits. As an award-winning entrepreneur yourself, you understand where they're coming from. And again, if they're being authentic, then they're not being superficial, right?
Exactly.
And they're definitely not selling out. They're creating opportunities for themselves by pushing themselves out of the comfort zone, which is anyone can appreciate that.
Exactly. Thank you for having me here. I appreciate it. I'm glad you gave me an opportunity to enlighten the audience, to educate them on the importance of creating a professional and personal brand for themselves. So thank you, sir. This
was a special edition of the Strategic Growth Podcast with our guest, Gregory Jerome. It's our bonus 5th Wednesday of the month episode. Thank you guys for tuning in. Make sure you hit the subscribe button, tell a friend, hit us up on social media, all that good stuff. And check it out. In 1 week, we'll have another episode of the Strategic Growth Podcast. I've been talking for 30 minutes. My tongue is tied. Pritch will be back next week for our first of the month episode. Until then, good luck.
Thanks for listening to the Golding Group Strategic Growth Podcast. Make sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. Tell a friend, leave a review, and engage with us on social media. To contact us, please visit thegoldinggroup.com.